My name is Emily, and I'm currently 20 years old, but the story happened to me when I was about 14 to 15. Me and my family took a road trip one weekend to a mall about 2 hours away from my hometown. It was my mom, grandmother, brother, and myself. The mall was located in a smaller town in Georgia, and we had visited many times before.
That looked like a big
During
mall.
this time in my life, I really wanted to be able to go off on my own. So I split up from my family at the time and decided to go into Claire's.
That's your first.
If you don't know what Claire's
your first
is,
mistake.
it's basically a jewelry store for mainly younger/adolescent girls. This'll be important for later.
It's a jewelry store. You could get piercings. You could dang near get a tattoo. You could get a lobotomy. You could get anything at Claire's, and they'll charge you $4.99.
I walked inside and started browsing around the store. After about 2 to 3 minutes into looking around the store, I noticed an older man looking at some headbands and other girlish things. I wanted to look at them as well, and so I walked over and stood about 6 feet away from him. I've been listening to scary stories since I was young, so in my mind, I thought it was odd that he was here by himself. I was expecting his daughter to come up or someone else to be with him. As we were standing there for a while, not one person ever approached him. The man then turns to me and he asks about which ones I like the best, and I gave him my honest opinion. I think that he mentioned something about shopping for his daughter, so I tried to help him the best that I could. I originally had an uneasy feeling about him being there alone, but since he said he was shopping for his daughter as a surprise, I really tried to shake the uneasy feeling I had. I started moving away from him to other sections of the store, just looking at everything, and I noticed he would move to every section I went to and would continue to ask me questions. He eventually asked something along the lines of where I was from, and I tried my best to just give him a vague answer. I don't want some random older man knowing where I lived, even if we were far away from home. I kept moving around the store to kind of see if he would just check out and leave already, but he just continued to browse the store. I eventually checked my phone to a couple of missed calls and texts from my mom, so I texted her back and decided to leave. I knew that she was in the next building over, so as I walked out of the door and into the right, I suddenly saw my mom. She was walking right towards me, so I smiled. I suddenly saw the happy expression leave her face. I can't really describe the expression it had afterwards, as I'd never seen my mom look like that before. She started talking to me as we were walking to the store where my grandmother and brother were. Once we were inside, my mom then told me and my family that she had a really bad feeling, and that's why she called and texted me so many times. And after a few minutes with no response from me, she decided to head over to Claire's to check on me. I just so happened to walk out when she was coming over. My mom went on to say that as soon as I walked out of the door, the man who had been following me rushed out of the door after me and looked like he was going to grab me, and that once he saw my mom walking towards me and talking to me, she said the man's expression changed and he looked pale. Before I could even notice what happened and turned around, she said the man took off. I've never been more grateful for my mom's intuition. I really don't know what could have happened if she didn't come over and meet me when she did.
You would have had to
We
fight
never
for your
called the
life.
police about it,
Would have happened.
and I have no idea if he ever did anything to anyone else.
But how far he finna get you out of
I
the
really
mall?
wish we could have done something, but he left so quickly, and all my mom was focused on was that I was safe. We always thought that town was safe, so the rest of the trip and subsequent ones, I always stayed really close to my mom. I'm always super cautious when I'm out in public, and I now carry pepper spray and knives. Please protect yourselves, and don't turn away from your gut feelings. They very well may save your life one day.
Y'all did extra stuff with doing that. He did not have no knife. Knock it off.
Several months
This
ago,
is night
I
shift
sat
horror
at a
stories.
mall
We haven't
food
got to
court by
one night
myself.
shift.
I was taking a break from shopping to have something to eat. The mall was very busy, and so was the food court, but I had a lot of shopping to do. I was looking at my phone as I was eating, and out of nowhere, I received a text message. It was not from anyone in my contacts, and the message said, "Hey." I figured that it was a wrong number, and I ignored it. But they texted me again, probably about a minute later. This time, they said, "I see you." I stopped what I was doing and looked up, checking around the crowded food court. Nobody appeared to be looking at me, though. I was sure that this was still a wrong number. I decided to text the number back, though. I said, "Who is this? I think you might have the wrong number." Very quickly, I got a response saying, "No, I have the right number. I can see you eating right now." This response sent a chill down my spine.
How do
This
you got
particular
my
mall
number, though?
was not that close to my house, probably almost an hour away. I didn't know of anybody who knew that I was here and would prank me, like a friend or something. Plus, this was a new number that I didn't know. I once again looked all around the immediate area. There had to be hundreds of people, and it could have been anyone. It was basically useless to try and guess who it could be. I texted the number back, asking once again who this was. I didn't get a response after this. Now I wasn't really sure what to do. Was this just some harmless prank, or a creep stalking
It's not
me?
a prank.
I didn't
Why
text
would
them
you-
back and just kept eating and minding my own business. But I looked up and scanned the area every so often, trying to find somebody looking at me. It would be like finding a needle in a haystack, though.
Yeah.
A few minutes later, the number tried calling me. My phone was ringing, but I had no interest in talking to them. I declined the call. After that, I decided to leave the area. I walked away to keep shopping. I had quite a bit more to do. For the next several hours, I walked all through the large mall into many different stores. I bought a lot of things, and by the time I was done shopping, I forgot all about the random person texting me. I hadn't received any text since I was in the mall food court. I hadn't been called either. Finally, when I was done shopping, I went to leave the mall. I was within feet of the exit doors when I felt my phone vibrate. I didn't think anything of it and assumed that it was just one of my friends texting me like usual. I took out my phone to check as I approached the doors. The text was from the same unknown person, and it said, "Leaving so soon?" I couldn't believe it. I stopped and looked behind me. There was still a decent amount of people in the mall walking around that I could see. Again, nobody was directly looking at me or anything like that. I still had no clue who it was. I decided there to just leave, and I walked quickly out of the mall. I checked back to the doors to see if anybody followed me outside, though. A few people did leave behind me, but there was no way of really knowing. Nobody seemed to follow me to the area of the parking lot where my car was, and I got inside my car quickly and left. I drove back home, which took about an hour. I was 100% sure that I was done with whoever this person was. Still, I had so many questions. How did they get my number? Why were they watching me? And most importantly, who was doing it? I wondered these things the entire drive back, but I still figured that it was all behind me. After getting home, I went inside and put the things away that I had bought. It was at this time when I received another text. This was pretty strange for whoever this was to still be texting me. They said, "Nice house."
And you
I
ain't
thought
do
they
nothing
had to be
about it?
joking. Just to be safe, though, I walked over to the front window and looked outside. It was nighttime now, and I carefully peeled back the blinds a little. I saw a car slowly driving down the street past my house. The speed that it was traveling was much slower than cars normally would. Plus,
Going like
my
2
street is
miles
usually
per
fairly
hour?
quiet. There was no doubt in my mind this was the person who had been texting me. Obviously, I couldn't see inside their car, but I could see that the vehicle appeared to be a smaller-sized SUV. It drove off, out of sight, and down the street. I texted back, asking again who was doing this. They didn't respond that time either, which was no surprise. After this, I finally blocked the number. I watched out my window several more times that night, but I never saw the car returning. Since then, nothing like that has happened.
Playing around.
I still wonder about it, though, and I haven't gotten any answers. Was it some random person stalking me? The fact that they possibly followed me for an hour back to my house just to drive by is really creepy.
They followed you since you was in the mall. They would have been
When I was
blocked at that
14
food
years
court.
old, my mama dropped me off at the dentist office, which happened to be located inside the closest mall to home.
So this not even, they misconstrued this. This supposed to be disturbing night shift. We have yet to see one night shift. We seeing mall horror stories. This all takes place in the mall.
She told me to give her a call when my appointment
Dollar Tree
finished,
never
but
been
I had
connected
forgotten
to
to
no
bring my
mall.
cell
Knock it
phone
off.
with me. I wasn't there long. maybe 20 minutes tops. I had no way of calling my mom, so I thought I could ask the receptionist if I was able to use the office phone, but they were using it. So I waited and waited. I waited for 5 to 10 minutes, but to me, it felt like the longest minutes of my life. The phone was still in use when I decided to look for a phone booth in the mall. Now, I wasn't really sure if the mall had any, but it didn't hurt to look, right? Or so I thought.
There'd be phone
As I
booths in
walked to the
malls?
main entrance, where I assumed the public phones would be at, if any, I noticed 3 men walking opposite of me on the other side of the pathway. One of them acknowledged me and tapped on the shoulders of the other 2, then pointed to me, and then whispered something amongst themselves. Red flags immediately went off. That day, the mall was relatively empty, not too much people around to shop, so I made the decision to turn back to the dentist office. Then they crossed over to my side and started to follow me. That's when I panicked. My heart started racing as I picked up my pace. When I reached the turn to the office down the hall, I looked back to see if they would still follow me there. They did.
When you
As
turn
I got
big,
closer,
you run.
I saw the restrooms on my left and debated whether to go and hide in there. But I noticed
What
they were
that gonna
locked,
do?
so I kept walking. I spotted a family sitting on the bench just outside of the office. So I quickly decided to stay next to them as the seats inside the office were completely filled. I then turned to the direction from where I came from to see if the men were still there. They were
And
now
they
standing
were.
and smiling at me before walking towards the restrooms out of sight. I knew they weren't actually inside there since they were locked. I waited a few more minutes, but they stayed hiding. I assumed waiting for me to walk by again, but I walked inside of the office to finally make my call and go home. I will never go back to that mall again. Please be aware of your surroundings.
I guess.
I don't go shopping at malls or things like that very often. But when I do, I tend to buy a lot of things. Clothes,
I don't.
electronics, whatever.
Buy me a little
There's a
pretzel.
decent-sized mall that's maybe 10 minutes away from where I live.
Maybe a little Bath and
And I
Body
go there
Works
occasionally.
perfume. If I'm
The
feeling
mall has
funny.
quite a few popular stores, and just about anything you could want to buy. I went there one weekend, and only had a couple of things that I wanted to get for sure. I was open to buying other things, though. As the day went on, I ended up finding quite a few things. I basically shopped all day, and by the time I was
Oh, I
done,
thought we
my
was
arms were
old
full
dude.
with bags. I stayed at the mall until some of the stores were closing, and then I decided to finally call it a day. I walked back to my car, which I had parked at the top level of the parking garage attached to the mall. When I got inside of the parking garage, things were significantly less busy. There were far less cars, and when I got to the top level where I had parked, I didn't see any other cars at all. In fact, it appeared that my car was the only one parked there. I walked over to it, but when I got within maybe 75 feet, I heard a noise. The car was sort of around a corner, and the noises were coming from out of my view. I kept walking, and when I was maybe 50 feet away, whoever had been making those noises came into view. I saw about 4 or 5 people come around the corner.
Oh
They
my
walked sort of in front of my
gosh.
car, blocking it. One of the men started walking towards me at that point.
The second
had
I
a
see that, I'm
terrible
dropping
feeling.
my stuff and dipping.
I knew there were no other cars parked up here, so the men were probably up to no good. Plus, most of them wore dark clothing and sweatshirts with the hoods up. Some of them, I could barely see their face. It was like they were trying to conceal their identities. One of the men held
We could
something
see
in his
about
hand,
3 of them
and I couldn't
faces.
quite tell what it was. With all of my bags in my hands, I turned around and immediately started sprinting for the mall. I ran as fast as I possibly could. One of the men shouted something at me, but I'm not sure what it was because there was a bad echo in there. I don't think they chased me, but I didn't look back to check. I was able to make it back inside the mall, and when I did, I kept walking quickly inside of it. I looked back several times, but I didn't see any of the men. I don't think they followed me into the mall. When I made it back towards the center of the mall, I finally felt safe.
When they
There
see
were a
you
few
dip, you
people
chill-
here and
they
there,
chill.
although most of the
They didn't
stores
feel like
inside were
running.
closed. I waited there until there was basically nobody else left. Then I decided that I would try to go to my car once more. I made it there, and luckily this time, the men were gone. I still left as quickly as possible.
Right.
Looking back at that day, I'm sure that they were going to try to rob me for all that I had bought. Probably my money
Right.
too. I reported the incident on the mall website, but haven't heard back.